See if it opened this time. Okay, here we go. All right, running it back from the top. All right, here we go. Salute to NBA Nation on this Monday afternoon. Another edition of the NBA Report, hosted by yours truly, CP the Franchise. On today's episode, we got to talk about those red-hot Cleveland Cavaliers standing at 11-0, the best record in the National Basketball Association. Plus, Knicks fans are scrambling, man. These Knicks are having a problem after going 1-4 on the week, and the infighting has increased in typical Knick fashion. We're going to talk about some of the Knicks issues. Plus, we're going to talk to our guy Eric Newman, man, about his Boston Celtics. We're going to get a champs check-in report, see what's going on there in Boston. And finally, man, it's NBA media on its last legs. We're going to react to Brian Windhorst of ESPN's comments about the state of NBA media. That and much more. Hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. Another edition of the NBA Report, man. Let's tap in. All right, man. Salute to everybody in the chat, and salute to my guests, salute to my panel today, man. Joining us today, starting on the right-hand side, man. You guys know him very well here in the New York sports scene. He is a host for SNY TV for a number of shows, including New York Got Game, including the SNY Rapid Rundown. My guy Dexter Henry is in the building. And for the first time joining us on the NBA Report, he's a former executive producer of Showtime Basketball, one of the creators of the KG Uncensored. KG, what was the Garnett? I'm sorry.
Kevin Garnett. Anything is possible.
Anything is possible, man. I don't know why I said uncensored. Anything is possible. Also on Showtime Basketball. I'm the co-host with Bobito Garcia on Basketball Radio. My guy Eric Newman is in the building. Eric, how you feeling today, man?
Terrific. Great to be on with you guys, and makes me feel like I'm back at home on the other side of the country here. So looking forward to this.
There we go, man, and welcome to the show. So I'll start with you, man. These Cleveland Cavaliers, 11-0, had a notable week this week, beating the Golden State Warriors, another upstart and surprising team right now, beating the Warriors and then hanging on to beat the Nets to go 11-0. What's been your impressions of the Cavs start so far into Kenny Atkinson, man?
You know, we look at teams when they're in the playoffs and we ask ourselves, what does this team need to do to get to the next level? And sometimes it's a coaching change. Sometimes it's a talent addition. And sometimes it's just time, health, and chemistry. And I think that's what we're seeing now with the Cavs. Last year, Garland in and out of the lineup. They had ups and downs. They, of course, made it to the second round and lost to the Celtics in 5 games. But the team was never consistently there because the health and the chemistry didn't feel right. And now with getting everybody healthy in the offseason, I thought Bernie Bickerstaff did a good job. But we all know in the NBA that organizations want microwave results and have little patience. Kenny Atkinson, of course, is a proven commodity as both a head coach and an assistant coach, and you guys know this with the job that he did in Brooklyn before they decided to go with the attempted super team route. So I think this is the Cleveland Cavaliers game plan aligning behind the dynamic backcourt of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Donovan showing the kind of leader that he can be along with high-level talent, and I'll get to more of that in a minute. But this Evan Mobley, Jared Allen front court combo with their combination of role players, New York's own Ty Jerome coming off the bench now, averaging in double figures along with Karis LeVert. And then just, role guys, Okoro, Wade, and the guys that just step up for them on a nightly basis to plug holes. And it's not an accident this team is off to a really good start.
I mean, Dex, did we overlook these guys in our preseason standings? And was that foolhardy? Because, I mean, Bernie Bickerstaff, despite his shortcomings, they were a good regular season team. I mean, 2 years ago, when the Knicks saw them in the playoffs, they were one of the best teams in the league, the 4th seed in the East. They won 51 games, good offense, good defense, a good core, especially once they added Donovan Mitchell. Then last year, despite the multitude of injuries coming at different times to that core, they still won 48 games and then once again had the 5th seed in the East. So maybe we were a little bit short-sighted there in discounting the Cavs, especially because a lot of the preseason talk did not include them at the top of the East.
No, you're right. A lot of the preseason talk included Boston, included Milwaukee, who was nowhere near the top right now. Philadelphia, also nowhere near the top, and the Knicks. I think, and it's funny, I remember you talked about this with me in my show, and you said you thought the Knicks could even finish third in the East. And I think one of the teams some of us had, including me, as I could see Cleveland having a good regular season this season. It wouldn't have shocked me if they finished second. Wouldn't have even shocked me if they finished first. I thought this would be a good regular season team. I did not think they'd start 11-0, right? Like, I'm not going to say I had that on my bingo card. But I think a lot of what Eric said is really important here. Continuity. It's a word we hear a lot, but then people don't value it. You see a team for 2 years, they get bounced out in the first round, they make it to the second round, and everybody's like, oh, we got to blow this up, right? I think it's interesting they didn't do that in terms of the personnel on the roster. They changed the head coach in Kenny Atkinson. Kenny Atkinson has grown as a coach. He learned some things from when he was with Golden State. The key thing for me here, CP, is look at how he's playing these guys in their minutes, right? Donovan Mitchell is under 30 minutes a game and is really efficient, probably the most efficient playing we've seen in his career. And then you look at Evan Mobley, right? The usage for him, his usage rate has gone up, but he's playing also 29.3 minutes a game. So he's under 30 minutes. Now, some of it helps that they've been blowing some teams out and they've been really dominant. So that does affect things with the early numbers in the 11-game sample. But look, the way he's managed the minutes, the way he's trusting his guys, the way the offense looks, the defense looks better. They look tougher. They do not look like the team that got punked by the Knicks 2 playoffs ago.
Yeah.
So I think this Cleveland team is to be respected, and I think a lot is to be said of what Eric is talking about. And continuity matters. Having that chemistry, going through the wars, learning some things. You're seeing the difference, and I know we'll get to this with the Knicks. The Knicks now, while talented, still are figuring some things out. Not saying they can't. They're still figuring some things out. So I think this Cleveland team, they've been together for a while, and kudos to them and kudos to their front office because they stuck with it. And it looks, at least appears now in the early season, small sample, looks like it's paying dividends.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the problem. Even with me as a Knicks fan with the talk right now, because through 8 games, the fan base is straight up panicking. But you've got to pull this thing out. And Eric, you of all people know as a Celtics fan, how much these guys had to go through, take their lumps, how many different iterations of around the core that they had to make before they finally got it right. How many Eastern Conference Finals, losses they had to go through. I mean, they had to take their lumps before they finally hit the promised land. And we're just so short-sighted and lack so much patience around team builds that here this team is with a great core. You have 2 premier guards, talented guards, and a young, versatile big man / wing in Mobley, who is now should be maybe in most improved conversations. Like these are the gradual steps that this team was looking for.
You hit it on the head. I mean, when has a team just all of a sudden come together and figured it out on the fly in their first year? Like, let's be honest. The 08 Celtics did.
08 Celtics, because, that's what I was going to say.
Because it was the perfect convergence of veterans and role players at the right time, right? And the current Celtics, CP, I'm so glad you brought it up, are such an example, and I hate to use the word, anything around process at this point is kind of a joke because of what the Sixers have planted the seed on with us, but the Celtics stuck with it and they ignored the naysayers saying, oh, you need to trade Brown or Tatum to get a Butler or an AD, or these guys can't play together. And it's hard to win in this league. And I know you guys realize this, but we are so prisoner of the moment because of the social media aspects of the league, because of the super team phenomenon, which I have a lot of fun talking about. But guys, just throwing this out there, right? Since Bird and Magic came into the NBA in 1979-80, that's 40. This will be 45 seasons since that's happened. Only 14 franchises have won an NBA title. So that just speaks to how hard it is to win in this league. And you've got to have the continuity. You've got to have the health, not to mention, and this is going to be something I want to ask you guys when we talk about the Knicks, but you have the ever-evolving CBA, which changes how roster construction works, right? And kudos to the Cavs, because one thing that they're also doing, which if you rewind to 2 seasons ago or further, How many teams are putting two bigs on the floor at the same time
This
and
is
saying
true.
this is what we're doing instead of adjusting to everyone else playing small ball? Now they're one of the teams that's finding success. Obviously, Minnesota found success with that last year. The Lakers had success with that when they won in the bubble with Dwight Howard on the team with AD. The Celtics have success with that when KP and Horford play together and they're healthy. But Evan Mobley, we saw the potential, but now we're seeing what this guy can evolve to. If he's not an all-star this season, which I think he will be, and the team's hot start lends itself to that, this guy's going to be a multi-time all-star. He's got two-way star capability written all over him, and he allows them, and I'm so glad you mentioned this as well, he allows them to take the volume pressure off of Donovan Mitchell, where he doesn't have to have that high of a usage rate like he did in Utah and like he did early on in Cleveland. So this balance and chemistry the Cavs are showing, this is no accident. This is what they wanted to achieve here with the emergence of Mobley, and then, of course, getting the team healthy. And now we can see the backcourt that Donovan and Garland can be when healthy and when comfortable.
Mobley's been the guy, man, and the key to swing this thing for Cleveland. A lot of people were looking for him to take that step last year in his sophomore year. He didn't really get there. Some people were saying, you know, it was a regression, but he just wasn't as impactful. But this year, I mean, defensively, he's becoming force. You're seeing him rip the rebound down, take it all the way up to the basket. He's having a lot, like Dexter, you said, his usage is up. He's got a lot more responsibility in the offense. And then again, defensively, if he's showing that versatility, because I think that is one area where, yes, they did pick up Max Strus, but I think having a true wing, versatile defender, they're still slightly lacking there. So if he's going in there and kind of cleaning up those mistakes and giving him that, it's going to provide tremendous dividends for them on top of Jared Allen's ability to rebound and protect the paint. And so I think they have a lot of the makings, again, of a good team. Playoffs is going to matter, right? I mean, just like last year and the year before that, what they do in the playoffs is going to matter. We've seen a lot of teams with, you know, high-octane offenses and good defenses when the playoffs come around. And Donovan Mitchell has been on a lot of those teams, right, with the Jazz. And when playoffs come around, it's a different story. So we'll just have to see, man. But they are impressive, man. Absolutely impressive.
Yeah, and let me just say this about Donovan real quick. You know, like New York, we've been under fire for a long time about not producing star players anymore. And obviously the last like real born and bred New Yorker who stayed through all of high school to make an all-star team, I believe, is our man Kemba Walker, who played at Rice and then, of course, went on to UConn. But, you know, Donovan Mitchell's a New York kid, and he just so happened to finish high school at Brewster Academy, which is a prep school. But, you know, Donovan was part of this really special AAU team that I got to document back in 2012, right after I changed careers. So I went from the coaching, teaching Nike basketball clinic world to just hustling with the camera and using my basketball relationships to open doors. And shout out to everybody out there from the Nike world, the Dime Magazine world, my podcast partner, Bobito Garcia, of course, all my OGs back in the day for helping me navigate. And, you know, this AAU team was a one-off team. They practiced at the St. Anthony's church gym on Thompson Street, just below Houston Street. And it was a group of kids who at 10 years old were in Riverside together, and they weren't having the greatest experience at the time. And the father of one of them had some resources, and he started a team. And they brought in a young coach by the name of RJ Perovic, and they started to compete every year. And by the time I got connected with them in and you guys will appreciate this because it's a Knicks tie-in, I was documenting Tyson Chandler's Knicks free agency visit in the fall of 2011. So they win the title with Dallas. The season is delayed because there's a lockout. Dime Magazine calls me. There's a relationship there with Tyson's agency, Excel. And all of a sudden, I'm one-man banding this shoot with Tyson throughout the day, and we end up at this home on the West Side Highway. And it's the home of the guy that created that team. And we had been put in touch years earlier when I was teaching and coaching. And I just didn't have an interest in AAU at the time. And now I changed careers. We end up there. We're talking. And the next thing I know, I'm documenting this journey of this AAU team in 2012 to the 15U Nationals. And it's the year before Donovan gets on everybody's radar. Eric Paschall was on the team. Mike Williams, the captain from Rutgers, was on the team, who started Bishop Laughlin. And when I watched Donovan play, you could see the athleticism. You could see the potential. You saw a great kid, comes from a great family. And people would ask me, like, yo, these kids going to go somewhere? I'm like, there's a couple here. And there's two in particular that I could see in the league one day. And it turned out to both be Donovan and Eric. And they've both made it. But to see Donovan now, it's not just the talent. It's the maturity. It's what he does in the community.
Yeah.
And now he's leading the Cleveland Cavaliers. And, he's the first leader of the Cavs in terms of a successful team since, of course, LeBron James left following the 2018 season when he went out to LA to sign with the Lakers. So wanted to share that about Donovan. This is no accident, and they're going to be a contender for the whole year if they can stay healthy. There's no doubt. Health
will be it, man. Dex, Will Rose in the chat says they said Cleveland's asking price was too much for Mitchell. In retrospect, it was a bargain. That was the Mitchell trade.
He's talking about the Cavs trading for him from the Jazz. Is that the question?
Yes, and then you also got to after last night's debacle in Indiana with the Knicks. Yeah, you got some fans saying, "Oh, we could have had Donovan. We could have had Donovan. Now they want Donovan."
Come on. You know what's funny,
It's
CP?
crazy.
You remember this because I was in Vegas when that trade went down, and I texted you as it went down when the Cavs acquired him. And look, Knicks, the revisionist history. The Knicks would have been too small in the backcourt. I supported the move of them not making the move. The Knicks have a fine team. We'll get to this.
Yeah.
The fans need to calm down. We just talked about this. It's the patience in the process.
Patience, man.
I know Eric brought up the Philly word, right? It's the process. And you have to stick with it. Kudos to the Cavs for sticking with it. Kudos to the Knicks for sticking with their plan and wanting to develop the team they wanted to do. I think people just have to see it through. Donovan's a fantastic player. Listen, there are people who thought Donovan Mitchell shouldn't have came back at the end of last year. Eric, you know this. There are people talking about that with Donovan saying, hey, I don't know if he should be back with the Cavs. The Cavs should trade Allen or Mobley. There are all these people wanting to break it up.
They did with the Celtics, man. They try to break it. They try to break you up,
man. Tatum and Brown. The same thing, right? So we see this cycle, and this will get more into how we talk about the NBA, right? And I think patience, process, continuity, could we get a little bit more of that? Good trade for the Cavs. Perfect for them at the time. They stuck with the process. It seems like it's working out for them now.
Go ahead, Eric,
real quick. If there's anything to revisit here, and CP, please pull it up. So I'm blanking, but the Knicks should have drafted Donovan Mitchell.
Well, that's that. I agree. That's
the one. That's the one. And I'm forgetting who they drafted instead
Frank.
Because all these.
The French enforcer, Frank Ntilikina.
So that's the big miss.
Yeah,
right. But it's not like Donovan went the next pick. He lasted 5 or 6 more picks. The Knicks aren't the only ones that made the mistake.
Correct.
Right.
That's the revisionist history. But we are definitely all aligned here that building a championship, forget a championship team that wins it all. Building a consistent contender
is hard.
It's tough. Hard. It takes time. It takes time.
No question about it, man. And shout out to my 2 cents in the chat. He says, keep the schedule in mind for these Red Hot Cavaliers. I mean, you can go through it. They started off the season at the Raptors, smoked them by 30. Versus the Pistons, beat them by 12. At the Wizards, smoked them by 19. Won the game against the Knicks. That was a quality win. Not just being a homer. I thought that was a well-earned win. They did beat the Lakers, smoked them by 24. Lakers had shot out the gates very well. They beat the Magic without Paolo. 2 wins against the Bucks, who are reeling. At the Pelicans, who are pretty average. The Warriors win was definitely a quality win, and then they beat the Nets. So I mean, of those, you got about 2 or 3 real quality wins of the 11. Are you guys downplaying the schedule with the Cavs hot stuff?
And I will add that those Bucks wins were close victories that they closed the game well and got it done. Now some of it the Bucks are stumbling, but they won close games and got that done. So I'm giving them credit. Listen, you got to beat who you're supposed to beat, and there are quality wins in there. Listen, and the Golden State win, had Golden State won, everybody would have been talking about how great of a win that was for them. Now they smoked Golden State and handled them easily. But listen, Golden State had been playing good basketball coming into that game. The Cavs played well. They took care of business against the Nets. The Nets were up on them by 14, I believe, in the third quarter in that game, and they came back. You got to give the Cavs credit. They're taking care of business. They're getting it done. Yeah, I'm not gonna be here getting down on their schedule. I'm not gonna do that.
I refuse to participate in downplaying wins.
Yeah.
At the NBA level.
Yeah.
Like, how else do you gain confidence and chemistry? And when teams, the NFL is an interesting comparison, right? Because you have the term any given Sunday, but in the NFL, when a team goes from a 4-win season to challenging for the playoffs, everyone's like, well, who did they beat? Well, they beat the teams that are on their schedule to position them here. And I think that we're forgetting, and CP, just flashing back to the South Shore of Long Island high school basketball days, it's like, well, you're learning through competing. So the Cavs are continuing to learn who they are, how their chemistry works, how their rotations work, how this is going to balance out by Donovan playing less minutes and spreading the ball around. They have 6 guys scoring in double figures. And you know what? 11-0 is 11-0. This is the National Basketball Association. So
can't knock it. Can't knock it, man.
That's it.
Well, while they are 11-0, my New York Knicks, it's been a battle through 8 games, man. Through a grueling 8 games, they are once again finding themselves in a bit of a challenge, man. They lost a tough one last night to the Indiana Pacers, got smoked in the fourth quarter. 40 points they give up to the Pacers in the fourth quarter. They go 4-5 on the campaign, 1-3 this week, rather. I mean, Dex, I'll start with you, man. Thoughts on just where things are right now with this team and how they get back on track, man?
Yeah, listen, it's funny, and the talk last week with the Knicks, just watching, I'm watching your show, CP, I'm watching Knicks Fan TV, I'm watching some other places, I'm talking to the people I talk to about this. The talk around it for some of the fan base was worrying about the Knicks offense, and I was like, why are you worried about the offense? The offense is fine here, right? Like, there's still things with the offense that looks a little bit clunky, but I'm not worried about the Knicks offense. Now, the defense, that's a concern. You mentioned 40 points they gave up in the fourth quarter to Indiana. Let's go back to Wednesday night in Atlanta. The problem in that game is they get absolutely dominated in the paint by a team that they're much better than in the Hawks. The Hawks controlled the paint, was able to score on them easily. They gave up second chance points. That did them in that game. And then honestly, they had a 5-point lead with two and change to go. They didn't execute. In Houston, on last Monday, a week ago, they don't execute as well in that. The offense was fine. The defense was not good. I still think this team, we talked about this in the summer, CP, at Summer League. You got Wingstop. Wingstop's going to be fine as they learn the communication is better. The key is how does Karl Anthony Towns play in drop coverage, right? And how does he react and respond, and how is he connected to the 2 wing players? That's the key for me there. I'm not tripping over it because the one thing I have seen from Cat on defense is he's not making the dumb fouls, and I've talked to you about this, CP, that would annoy me with him. I think there's a level for this team to get better on defense. I think also there's guys playing too many minutes because of injuries. That is a factor as well, too. You need Precious Achiuwa to come back. You need Campaign to come back and Landry Shamet, and then obviously eventually Mitchell Robinson. I think that'll help with the Knicks defense. So with all that being said, 1-3 week last week. They are 4-5 overall through 9 games. It's a small sample size theater. You can't trip over this. The defense will come. I don't think this Knicks defense is going to be a top 8 defense. Can they get somewhere between 10 and 13? Yes, I think they can. I think this offense can be a top 5 offense. If they do that, that is the makings of a good contender. They can be fine. What you want them to be trending in the right direction. Eric just said the same thing about the Cavs, right? And this is where I hate the discussion. I hate the talk that the regular season doesn't matter. This is why the regular season matters, folks. You have to build good habits. You have to learn how to work with your new teammates. You have to build that chemistry, build that continuity. I think the Knicks are doing that. And let's judge this team when they get some bench pieces back and the starters aren't playing 35 plus minutes, all of them, and they're getting a little rest and it looks fresher in the fourth quarter. Judge them then. So for me, if you're a Knicks fan, you should say, okay, the offense has been pretty solid. I see the peak of what this team could do. I've seen it in flashes. I saw it in the Bucks game. The defense has been inconsistent, but there's a lot of new pieces here, and that's going to take time. Does this team have a good defensive coach? We all know what Tibbs can do on defense. We know this. So I think he can get it right. They made this trade. You're banking on getting the most out of Cat on both sides of the ball. Hopefully he can get, I don't know, does he get 10% better defensively throughout the year? Maybe. And if that does, I think the team can be all right. So 4-5, I'm not really tripping over it, honestly. CP, you sat with me in the studio when we did a Knicks season preview, and you and J-Mac were with me and said, look, this team could be 5-5 after 10 games. Well,
Yeah.
they're right there. We'll see what happens tomorrow night, but they are right there. And I don't think any of us that watch basketball for a long time are necessarily surprised about the work in progress that they are right now.
Yeah, look, I thought this first 10 was going to be tough regardless, and it's certainly turning out to be that way, and they're up against it, man. You have Mitchell Robinson out an extended period of time. Precious Achiuwa is not even cleared to practice, so that's a concern, and another hit to the front court. And then you have Campaign, who's out, Landry Shamet, who's out. I mean, these are all guys who they factored in. Once you gutted the team, Eric, to bring in Karl Anthony Towns, these guys were super important to the success of this Knicks bench. I mean, Miles McBride is doing the damn thing, and he's certainly delivering. But behind that, you really don't have much else to lean on right now. And so now there's a big debate within the fan base. Why isn't Tibbs going to the bench? These guys need playing time. They're burning the starters out. It's game 9. What do you think, man?
There's a number of things to touch on here, right? Like, first off, you made a major trade on the eve of the season. There's going to be a serious chemistry adjustment there, regardless of how good Karl Anthony Towns is, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is Mitchell Robinson is out. And I'm going to get to that and the importance of that, other than the obvious, in a moment. But Hardenstein played such an important role for this team last year in terms of depth, versatility, and the skill set that he had. And there's no just replacing that. There's the evolution of other players and the rotation, and hopefully getting Precious back to try to plug that front court depth, because they're obviously thin in the front court, and that was a major concern coming into the season. But I want to talk about Cat. And I want to talk about what you guys are seeing defensively, because obviously Cat last year was part of one of the best defensive teams in basketball. And say what you want about Rudy Gobert in terms of whether or not he's overpaid or he's overrated or he shouldn't be Defensive Player of the Year, but Cat was playing against a capable 7-foot-plus shot blocker next to him as the 4, not anchoring the defense as the 5. And when Mitchell Robinson comes back and you can play Cat and Mitch together, this team is going to change defensively in an instant. The problem is right now, you're too thin, and you talked about Atlanta. Atlanta's got Johnson, Capella, and Okongwu up front. Like they, athletically and size-wise, of course they were going to do whatever they wanted. So the Knicks need to figure something out right now to just hold it down before this team gets healthy. But hitting the panic button after 9 games, knowing that your 2 main defensive front court players other than Cat are out, plus you're adjusting to all the chemistry issues, there's nothing to panic about right now.
Yeah.
The only thing to panic about is if there'd be a serious injury to one of your star players. Right. There's nothing else to panic.
Right.
Can I ask you guys something about that? Because Eric, you brought something up that made me think about it. If Mitch comes back and he's healthy, would you start with him at the 5? Because this is a question I'm definitely going to be asking as we get to this point in the season. Would you start him at the 5? Because I do think what you said matters. I think people totally devalue the fact that Karl Anthony Towns was a starting power forward on the best defense in the league last season, right? He was not hurting that defense. Did it matter they have Rudy Gobert? Did it matter they had some other good perimeter defenders? Yes, but would you put Mitch to start at the 5, Towns at the 4? Do you think that makes them better defensively? And is that how you'd rock? I mean, that might not be what you close with, but it might be what you start with. I'm just curious as what you guys think about that.
I mean, for me, I love playing the matchup game in the league, and you see the Celtics do this from time to time. Like they'll go big when they're healthy with Porzingis and Horford, and then they'll move Derek White to the bench, which is crazy to think about because he's now close to an all-star caliber player. But just using them as an example, talking about the Cavaliers before as an example, talking about the Hawks as an example, like you may need to sample that lineup to see what it feels like moving OG to the 3. Josh Hart, to me, was born to be a New York Knicks star 6th man, so there's nothing to worry about there. So I think you look at it, and then to your point, it doesn't necessarily matter who starts it, but who's your closing team, and what do the minutes look like when Cat and Mitch Robinson are playing together. I think that's going to be important to look at, but it's going to change the dynamic of the team. Defensively, rebounding, and the beauty of Cat is, he can play 27 feet from the basket or he can play 5 feet from the basket offensively. Yeah. So there's going to be a whole lot more versatility for the Knicks on both ends of the floor once Mitch comes back.
Man, there's so much there. I mean, there's just so much there. Right now, with Cat at the 5, they are getting cooked inside. That there's no question about it. They're getting absolutely incinerated inside. I spoke to a member of the Hawks coaching staff after that Hawks loss, and I told him, I was like, man, 58 points in the paint. What was the game plan there? He was like, hey, just go at Brunson and Towns in the pick and roll all day long, and that's what you were seeing. Those deep paint touches, testing Towns, pulling him away from the basket, and just gliding right by him. And so I think each of these games where you see the Knicks defense breaking down, it underscores the importance of a Mitchell Robinson, but also I think it also, like Eric said, it underscores the importance of having the option to utilize Mitchell Robinson, because, for example, in a game like last night against the Pacers, where their closing lineup is Halliburton, Ben Shepherd, Mathurin, Siakam, and Turner, you can't go with that Twin Tower lineup right there. That's going to be tough for the Knicks. Who you're going to put Towns on Siakam out there in the perimeter? That's going to be a tough one. And so they need to have the option where they can use Mitch and still have their advantages, but also be able to keep that option with Towns at the 5. But I also think that this Mitch prolonged recovery will give the Knicks a good enough sample size to see whether or not they can improve based on this configuration right now, or, they're going to have to just plug him into the starting lineup. The issue is his injury and his recovery time, because it seems like they are going to be very, very patient and diligent with his recovery, which I think is going to mean that he's going to have a longer ramp-up period even when he does come back, where it's going to be limited minutes and in certain spots to get him up to speed and in shape. So that could change things as well. And then finally, I'll say that if they do go to that, one of the issues that they're having right now, in particular last night's game against the Pacers, where they got outscored from 63 to 21, is that they're not generating enough of the threes that they want to take. And so the problem with taking Josh Hart out of the lineup is you're losing a facilitator there. He's almost become, when Brunson has his struggles, Josh Hart becomes your next important playmaker, because Towns and Bridges aren't consistent in that way right now. So, I think they got to be careful there with the offense-defense balance if they choose to take out Hart and swap in Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah, no, all good points. I'm really intrigued to see how it plays out, because I think it's rather fascinating what they do when he comes back. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, defense has to be cleaned up for the Knicks. I think we all agree on that. That is the issue for them early on this season, for sure.
Let me ask you guys something real quick, and it's I don't know if it's an identical analogy, right? But Julius Randle gave so much to this team and was a key part of this team, right? And obviously, I think everybody fell in love with what DiVincenzo brought to the table last year. So when this trade is announced, you're getting the best player in the trade, but I want to know what your emotional reactions were, because when the Celtics traded Marcus Smart to get Kristaps Porzingis, Marcus Smart is my favorite player. As a former basketball coach, you give me 5 Marcus Smarts, check the ball up, and we'll see. We'll see how this game goes. You know what I mean? But I knew the talent that they were getting back in Porzingis, and ultimately it was one of the keys to them winning the championship last year. So from an emotional level, and now what you're seeing with what this chemistry could be, where are you guys with this trade? I know it's early, but where are you with emotion and chemistry?
CP knows this because I texted him. I did not like it at first. At first, I didn't like it. I did. Well, look, some of the things that's happened, it clearly made them weaker defensively, right? But I saw the vision offensively for where the Knicks, what they were trying to do. And what I realized about that trade, after I took a step back for a bit, Eric, I was like, okay, this to me is more about a trade about believing in the culture of the team. And if you believe in the way the Knicks have been, this is what we're talking about, continuity. I know there's not continuity because they're changing pieces, but the culture of what they're doing in the process, they've been trajecting upward, right? And they came to a point and said, hey, this is the ceiling we have with this team that we have in terms of offense, and to beat the better teams, to beat Boston, to compete with Philly in the size and be able to stretch the floor and do all that, this is a move we're going to have to make. And if we need to fill in and tweak, you got to trust it. If I'm a Knicks fan, this is what I say to you. Why would you not trust what this front office has done so far in the last 4 years? What have they shown you to say that, hey, if they need to tweak this and make the team better, they won't? Now, a lot of their assets are gone. But right now, the way this Knicks core is, all you need to do is tweak on the margins, right? And that is possible. And so I also have to then believe this is also a bet on Jalen Brunson, his leadership. To me, and he's part of the culture. This is also betting on Tom Thibodeau and part of the culture that he's built. So if you either believe in the culture or you don't, right? And what I had to stop and think about is like, all right, Cat diversifies things for them offensively. The culture is solid here. I really actually do believe in that. And that even if they struggle, like we're seeing through these first 9 games, the culture is going to allow them to figure this out. They're going to work on figure this out. I don't think this is a Knicks team this season's going to spiral out of control, right? Like, I just don't see that with the leadership on this team, the culture, the way the guys want to win. So I've come around on it, and it was talking to some people like CP and some other people I talked to, and then talking to some people around the Knicks and things like that. That made me say, okay, I can see how this could work. So I will say even today, just to answer your question, even with the struggles we've seen through 9 games on defense, there's enough bright spots where we've seen fantastic ball movement, where we've seen some good defense. Like the defense looked really good on Friday against the Bucks. It looked really good. But I think like anything in life, when you're making adjustments, there's going to be some highs, there's going to be some lows till you figure some things out. We've all had this in our careers. This happens personally, and this stuff applies with sports too. So where I'm on the trade now is, I think it's the right move for the Knicks to make. I think sometimes you got to shake things up. I think we have to remember, you said this, Eric, they made a trade on the eve of a couple days before training camp started. They also had made a massive trade, to get Mikal Bridges right before the draft. Those are 2 major trades before the start of the season. 3 new players in the starting lineup. There's going to be an adjustment. If you thought this was going to be smooth sailing, it's being ridiculous. It's just like you said, Eric. The only team we've seen do this is the 2008 Boston Celtics in terms of having a smooth adjustment, in terms of bringing a whole bunch of new pieces. Those are 3 Hall of Famers, folks. This is not the same thing. And so I think it'll be fine. The more and more I actually like this trade. The more and more I get close to it. I love this trade for the Knicks. I think it's going to be fine. Everybody just has to be patient. Just be easy.
It's a work in progress, man. There's no question that Randall certainly contributed to that Knicks identity. Mitchell Robinson as well. And if you look at the team as a collective last year, a lot of that core, a lot of their guys really contributed to that. Bringing in OG Anunoby, Precious coming in, Josh Hart, Brunson, like DiVincenzo especially. Like they all collectively bought into that identity. And so it's easy to get concerned because they look a bit too finesse and a little soft on nights, and it seems like they kind of lost that toughness and physicality. But like looking at the moves that they've made, it's a signal that they did not believe that last year's team was going to go all the way. I didn't think so either. As good as they looked, everybody goes back to that January where they were unstoppable. I never had belief that Julius Randle was going to take this team to the promised land. I had hopes, but right. I really did not have much faith in him doing that, and neither did the front office. So they made the move and decided that it was not worth it to invest in them. So with that being said, to hit that pinnacle and hit the ceiling, it's going to require this team to take a gamble. It's going to take a risk. And I think that they are taking a calculated risk here that may not pan out. Maybe it's not this year. Maybe it's not next year. Maybe it's the year after that. It's going to take a little bit of time. But by and large, they invested in a primarily young team. Yes, there are some injury concerns. They just got to give it time to get it together. This is not going to be the final look of this New York Knicks team. They're still going to tinker on the margins, shore up the bench. On the years that they do have a draft pick, hopefully they hit on it. Maybe there's, another step up for Kolick and Hukporti and those guys' internal development, like what the Celtics are seeing. We'll talk about that. We've got to give it time. So I've understood, just like Dexter said, I can't count out what this front office is doing because, by and large, they've been hitting on their moves. Just got to give it time, man. The lack of patience is what's kind of clouding the overall judgment of this team. You just got to give it time for them to get it together, man. No question about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely.
And so, Eric, on your C's, man, 8-2 right now in the campaign, in the rearview mirror of the Cleveland Cavaliers that we talked to.
9-2. Don't take a win away. Don't take a win away.
They did beat the Bucks. They did beat the Bucks yesterday.
Eric's not going
to.
Hey,
he's right there, man.
Hey,
Eric was waiting to pull that out the whole time.
Oh my God, a New York Bulls.
Oh man.
Listen, my pops grew up in Brooklyn. There were only 8 teams in the league.
This is true.
He saw the Celtics play a couple of years before Bill Russell, and that's where the basketball bug landed. So I'm blessed.
Through the 11, how do you like where things stand right now?
I mean, Jason Tatum looks like he's reached another year.
Yep.
And thank you, Steve Kerr, for keeping him fresh during the summer. We greatly appreciate that. People would ask me, like, are you pissed off Tatum's not playing in the Olympics? I'm like, no, I am thrilled he's not playing in the Olympics. It's going to keep him fresh. It's going to make him hungrier. They look really good. Obviously, Jaylen Brown's been out for 4 games, and they are obviously not a group that is experiencing some championship hangover. I was lucky enough to be there behind the scenes for opening night, ring night. We did a live audience show with KG and Pierce, with fans, with Brian Scalabrine and Eddie House. And then, it was in the tunnel with Ray, Paul, and Kevin, and Paul's holding the trophy. And man, KG, if you threw him a uniform, he might have run out there for warm-ups. That's how amped he was. But the I mean, you want to talk about the benefits of being patient. Look at this basketball team. And I'm not saying this to twist the knife or anything, but to get to root for a team like this after the uphill climb that it's been, but like, let's take a step back and let's look at Danny Ainge and let's look at what Brad Stevens have done. And they only missed the playoffs once after the Pierce Garnett deal. And the Pierce Garnett deal to Brooklyn turned out to be the draft picks that became Tatum and Brown. So the window is wide open. The way they've handled the salary cap guidelines, the new CBA ramifications has been incredible. Last year, the adjustment to no Marcus Smart was definitely an adjustment, but then, and I say this, it's kind of funny. They got the gift of Holiday, and Drew Holiday gives them everything Marcus gave them and more in terms of poise, consistent jump shooting, and obviously a guy that won a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. So off to a great start. Peyton Pritchard is really looking like he could be in the 6-man conversation, which is big for them. And I think it's health. It's getting Porzingis back and making sure that he's right throughout the season. It's scary to think he only played in like 3 or 4 playoff games.
Yeah.
On their way to the title. And it's health and continuity and making sure, okay, there's not too much volume put on Tatum and put on Brown. But there shouldn't be, because Holiday, White, and Pritchard, along with JB, can all be playmakers on this team. So they know what they need to do to stay on track. I can't say enough incredible things about Coach Mazzulla and what he continues to evolve into, not just as a basketball strategist, but as a leader and a leader of men for that organization. And it's a great time to be a Celtics fan. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and I mean, you speak on the need for patience. I mean, look no further than 2 years ago when you had some Celtics fans ready to run Mazzulla out of town, and now he's the Wizard of Westwood. So things changed very quickly, and now you look at it. This guy has his team prepared on most nights. He's extremely cerebral, has an excellent game plan strategy, and as a young coach, has the respect of this locker room and has these guys running through walls. But there was a great article by I believe it was Jay King of The Athletic, who wrote about the importance of Drew Holiday and what he's brought to this team from a leadership standpoint, being last year, the only guy on the team with a ring, and rallying these guys through the tough times when they did face the adversity in the playoffs. And then also his adaptation and new role, both offensively and defensively, having a lot more freedom in Joe Mazzulla's defense and now kind of being the quarterback of that defense. It was a great article in The Athletic, man. Jrue Holiday was no question a game changer for those guys.
Yeah, that's another key, right? Like that trade, similar to the Cat trade, eve of the season, had to come into a new environment, figure out how he was going to fit in with all this talent. Now he had another successful Olympic experience, an off season, a training camp. And, this team is set up for a really exciting window of success with Holiday. Like the veteran poise and leadership of Holiday and Horford is so perfect for their young stars, because we're seeing Brown and Tatum evolve as leaders, but it's not too much because they've got Horford and they've got Holiday there. So it's really exciting. And, to come out of a championship and be that hungry and that dialed in, and obviously that opening night performance against the Knicks where they made 29 three-pointers was something special. But we were talking earlier in the show, and it ties into this about the way the game is covered, and I think Nick Wright had that rant about too many threes and all this, and this is not about me bashing Nick Wright, but have you watched the Boston Celtics play? Because
Right.
the Boston Celtics are not passing the ball around the perimeter and then jacking up threes, or for the most part, not watching Tatum dance into a sidestep three. They are driving the basketball to the paint, forcing the defense to collapse, and then playing the most beautiful brand of everyone sharing the rock basketball. And yes, they're working for open threes, because guess what? Threes are worth that much more than twos.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in an incredible way. And when that ball starts to move and they start to play out of that high post, and they've got so much versatility there, whether they're putting Tatum at the elbow extended area, or it's Horford, or it's Porzingis when he's back in the lineup, and obviously Holiday is one of the best post-up guards we've seen in the game. The way they play out of that stuff and find the open man, not to mention what they create in transition from how dialed in they are as a team defensively, it's beautiful basketball. So they're going to keep doing that. Obviously, the trend in the league is to shoot a lot of threes, but it's not shooting a lot of threes. It's how you're getting those shots, and that's a big part of the Celtics' success.
Yeah.
Paint touches, ball reversals, and you're going to get whatever you want. And if the defense is going to start to take away the threes and not help, then you're going to have wide open lanes to the basket.
Yeah.
And they're going to be going to the rim all night long.
Dex, your thoughts on the state of the C's, man? 11 games in, early season, man.
Man, the C's look good, and I think the scary part is that, they still don't have Porzingis, and they're working their way back to get it. But I think it's also the extension of what we're talking about. We talked about them trying to get to the mountaintop. They do, and now they have that confidence. I love that Eric brought back up the trade for Jrue Holiday, because that was a trade I loved for them last year. And look, I know the Knicks fans don't want to hear it because we don't got no love for the Celtics here, even though Eric had to pull out the hat and remind us about what happened on opening night. I see you, Eric. I see you. Listen, it's a testament to that continuity and belief in it. And you're seeing how that is exuded right now, in just how they play. Now, is there something to Tatum and Brown being mad because they didn't get the burn they wanted with the Olympic team? Maybe. Maybe it's that. But I think there's a lot of people that doubted this team. I thought it was ridiculous when people doubted them through the playoffs and said, oh, they didn't play anybody. They got lucky and they didn't play this team with injuries and all this other stuff. You play who you play. And I thought they played really good basketball through the playoffs. You saw what they were able to do to Indiana in the conference finals. I think Jason Tatum has heard the criticism about him, which has been ridiculous. To Eric's point about the way the Celtics play, I can't remember. I could be wrong about this. I don't remember if it was game 1 or game 2 in the finals against Dallas. There was a game where Jason Tatum did not shoot the ball well. It was one of the first 2 games. And everybody went crazy that he didn't shoot the ball well, but he had like 12 rebounds and 8 assists and played if you watched the game, you would have saw he played a really good offensive game. Offense, I think sometimes, to Eric's point, people just think about putting up points and ball in the basket. It's about moving the ball, attacking. Jason Tatum was making the right plays. And that's when I looked at Tatum and said, he's made a jump in his game, right? Where he could recognize if I don't have it, the defense is playing me a certain way. I'm going to trust my teammates. I'm going to make the right pass. And that's a testament. We got to give credit. We got to give credit to Joe Mazzulla on that.
Mm-hmm.
And, some to Ime Udoka, who had this team in the right direction before everything that happened. He had the stars realizing they had to trust something. That's what Ime was preaching a ton of that season before. Trust the process. And Marcus Smart was telling those guys, trust your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing that with this team. There's such trust in the ball movement. They know who they are. They know how they play on defense. And listen, they're still the best team in the league right now. I know the Cavs are off to that 11-0 start, but the Celtics are the best team. They're still the team to beat. And they have a world of confidence because they've been to the mountaintop. They've been through the fire. They've been through the wars.
Mm-hmm.
They've been through it all. They understand there's no situation they're going to be scared of. The Celtics, I think, will have a very good regular season record. Could they not get the number 1 seed? Probably not. I could see that going to Cleveland, but it doesn't matter. The Celtics play anywhere in Game 7. They're probably going to be favored in the East.
Yeah.
And the way the East is looking right now, where it's all jumbled up, and there's only, 3 teams with winning
Two
records? I believe,
teams
right?
with winning records, man.
2 teams with winning records,
Yeah.
and the Pacers are 500, right? That's it. I think the Pacers are 500. So there's a lot of teams like we talked about in the East that we thought were going to be at the top that are not at the top. And to the Knicks fans watching, it's like, look where Milwaukee is. Look where Philadelphia is, who the Knicks play tomorrow night. You're a Knicks fan, you're a game below 500. Maybe it's just not that bad. Maybe it's not that bad. The Celtics are fine with where they are, and I think they're looking good through 11 games.
So to everybody in the chat, once again, hit that thumbs up button for your boys, CP the Franchise, Dexter Henry, Eric Newman in the building. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Go ahead, Eric.
Real quick, Dex, that point you made about Tatum in the finals, it was Game 2. I was in the building. It's one of the best all-around games he's ever played.
I agree.
And I'm so tired of everyone just looking at the guy's field goal percentage.
Mm-hmm.
He facilitated everything from the point forward position that night and made a decision that I am gonna go into traffic. I am gonna take the hits. I am gonna draw the double team, and I am gonna make the right pass, whether it leads to the assist or the hockey assist. I think he finished the game with 12 assists, and it could have easily been 16 or 17. And his decision making and mental toughness to just play through the contact and hit the open man set the tone for that game, and obviously the remainder of the series. And we make these comparisons, right? And this one I feel pretty good about. Like, do you remember when you realized that Paul Pierce was so much more than just a scorer because of the basketball IQ and the way he moved the ball when he finally had some capable teammates around him where he didn't have to carry all the volume? You're seeing Tatum in a similar way now. And Tatum is having an incredible season thus far. But Dexter, I'm glad you shouted that out. That was a huge moment for him in the finals last year. And this guy just cares about winning. And him and JB are an incredible tandem. And his game keeps evolving. But I think this year is the MVP campaign for Tatum. Am I sitting here guaranteeing he's going to win it? No, but this year he's got a legit shot to be, top 2, if not winning the MVP this year. And then, your points on the East, man, like, it's a shame to see what happened with Paolo and Orlando because there's so much promise there. And then obviously if you're ranking the teams in the East, banking on health before the season, you've probably got Milwaukee and Philadelphia, in your top 5, definitely out of the play-in. And, the beauty of this game is the door is open now for other teams to evolve. But for the Knicks, the Cavs, the Pacers, obviously Orlando is going to compete every night until Paolo gets back. But Knicks, Cavs, Pacers, those are the 3 teams right now until Philadelphia and Milwaukee figure themselves out that, should be the ones who position themselves to push the Celtics. So the West feels a lot different because you look at the West before the season starts and you're like, wow, well, 10 or 11 of these teams could be playoff teams, In the East, it's a little different. I think we're going to see some teams build some identities as the year goes on, and then obviously health and continuity is going to decide a lot of the things as the season goes on in the East.
There you go. There you go, man. All right, let's get to the last segment of today's show, man. Great show, great conversation. Definitely enjoying this one, and I think this one was very appropriate in terms of having you guys on here to react to. Last week, Brian Windhorst on the Thanasis Atentacoupo podcast, I think it's called Thanalysis. He says that NBA media is not, and that is a good play on words. He says NBA media is not in a good place. He's quoted as saying, NBA media right now, we're not in a great place because I think we're devaluing things that help build the league up. Like, one of the things is storytelling. Everything is too short right now. People are too focused on tweets, too focused on getting crossed over, getting dunked on, getting embarrassed. Social media posts. Not as much storytelling, learning about players, and learning their backgrounds, what I call chronicling the season. So, Dex, kick it off, man, because, there's talk about the viewership decline, and is it the style of play? Windhorst saying there's no storytelling, the media is changing. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm so glad well, first of all, salute to you, CPA, because I think that having these conversations matter, right? Like having, and salute to Thanasis and Brian for bringing it up, because I think having these conversations, I have not liked, as somebody who loves the NBA, absolutely loves the NBA. It's my favorite league, favorite sport. I've hated the discussion around it in the way it is. So a lot of what Brian Windhorst says, I actually agree with it. And the reason I agree with it is like, this is my profession. I'm a storyteller. I'm somebody who loves telling stories, and I think telling stories matter. And I think I just want to be very clear to people. I think there's a variety of ways to do that. I am not saying there's one way to do it. I think there's storytelling through social media and shorts and TikToks and things that are really dope that people do, and I think that's great. But specifically what Brian's talking about, the long form storytelling, I do think that stuff matters. And that's also long form discussions like we're having right here. They're discussions with nuance. We're not just here spewing hot takes. And that's no shade to people to do the hot take stuff. That's cool too. But I think there always has to be balance and stuff, right? And I think particularly with the NBA and some of the stuff Brian talked about, we look at what the needle moves are, the topics that get everybody talking. You talk about the Lakers, people love to hate the Lakers. Celtics are in that way too, right? And that's going to move the needle on a lot of things. But what about the stories of the players that aren't told much? You referenced Jay King's story in The Athletic, which shout out to The Athletic, who does a great job of storytelling. And I think they're one of the front runners in that for people to do that. The story about Drew Holiday with the nuance of him and what he does with the defense. Sometimes I'd like to know a little bit more about things that are going on with different teams. I want to shout out James Edwards from The Athletic. He did a fantastic job with talking about how players go through their free throw routines on the Knicks. And I thought that was really cool, right? That's part of the storytelling. My coworker and colleague Stephen Bondi at the Post did a really good job at the start of the season talking about the perception of Cat being soft and why that really might not be true, right? I know Cat's a bigger star, but the nuances in these things matter. And I think often the way the league has been looked at, CP, has bothered me. Eric just referenced the comments by Nick Wright about there being too many threes, and particularly was singling out the Celtics, which I hated on that too. And I don't think that's a problem in the league. All leagues, all sports evolve. Why would you expect it to look the same? I don't want the basketball to look the same like it did in the 90s, and I grew up watching the basketball in the 90s.
So we all came up on.
Right, we came up on it, right? But things have to evolve, and that is fine. This desire for people to see the same basketball that they saw back then doesn't make any sense to me. Stylistically, you might like a certain thing, and if you think there are too many threes, what I would say to you is, well, if you watch a team like the Celtics, ask yourself if the shots they're getting are quality shots. That's what matters. You could jack up a whole bunch of threes and not really play good basketball. You could also take a whole bunch of twos or mid-range shots or whatever, however you want to play, and then not be good. It's about the quality of shots. It's about the ball movement. It's about the intricacies. And I think, to all that being said, there has to be a better job among media, right, of talking about the game, how we talk about the game. I still feel like the NBA doesn't get talked about with enough nuance to it, because a lot of it is presented as like, who's better, Jordan or LeBron? And it's like, we've heard this conversation like 55 million times. We don't have to do this no more. Is this team really in trouble? Listen, we all pose questions, we ask questions, but I think it's about how we ask those questions, how we frame those stories, how we talk about the league. Another thing, I'm sorry for this long soapbox rant, but another thing I do want to add, the load management stuff that's come up in the league and how it's been framed in the media. That's really bothered me because what happens is certain players get scapegoated for this. Look, Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid, they have chronic injuries, and it sucks for those players. But one thing I'll tell you, somebody, and sure, Eric, you'll back me up on this. Somebody who's covered the league, been around the league, talked to people. I've never heard any players say that they don't want to play. The narrative that's pushed out there by some that these players are lazy, that they don't want to suit up, is absolutely untrue. It couldn't be further from the truth. What I will say is teams are trying to protect their players and so protect their investments, which I understand. Now, if anybody knows me and see me talk about this on other platforms, the league and the season is way too long, and guys play way too much basketball at a young age and even on the AAU circuit. And this is why we see this increase in injuries all the time. People have this tendency to blame the players and not necessarily blame the league for how it's structured in the season being too long. And I just think it's wildly unfair. Players are now being scapegoated as being lazy, not wanting to play. The NBA has a bad TV product, which is absolutely not true. The TV product is not bad. This is a good TV product. I know we're all here with Leagues Pass subscribers. It's good. Are audiences changing? Are younger people not watching full games as much as they used to? Absolutely. But you know what I think younger people can connect to? And this is what Brian Windhorst is talking about. Stories. Storytelling. I don't care how you do it. Connect them to stories, things that they can feel that are real, people that they can connect to, personalities that they feel are real and invested in it. And I think if the league does this, to wrap up my point, if the league is doing that and the media is doing that, I think it's better for the league and the narrative. You can only control how you talk about what it is that you do. CP, this is your show. How you want it to be, how you frame it to be, is how it's going to be and how it's going to affect what comes out. When people come to the NBA report, they know what they're going to get because of the way you put it out there, the way other people talk about it, the way people like myself who support you speak about it, right? That stuff matters. And that's the same thing with basketball. And so I think Brian Windhorst is absolutely right. The media's got to be better at this. We got to talk about it better because you know what, a league that doesn't have this problem, you never hear this talk around the NBA, NFL. You never hear that talk that, oh, they have a bad TV product. And I think sometimes their stuff is oversaturated through the week. But nobody ever talks about it like that. I'm tired of the negative narratives around the NBA, and some of it is just rooted in laziness, to be quite honest.
Eric, what's your take, man?
I don't know how I'm going to follow up on that.
Sorry.
No. In the best of ways, Dexter, you hit so many great points, right? Like, I have had a problem with this for a really long time. And part of the success that we had at Showtime Basketball was, yes, we're going to be current with a lot of our content on our social platforms and digital platforms. And, you know, you take All the Smoke, for example. Many of the basketball interviews would start with, okay, what's going on in the here and now with the subject of the interview and the here and now of the league, and then we'll pivot back and we'll get into the journey of that subject and all the incredible career and life moments they had. But that came with a lot of nuance. That came with a lot of research. And anything we're putting out, excuse me, in regards to the here and now of the league, it's not hot take driven. It's careful analysis. It's strong opinions. KG, obviously, his show's going every week, and what him and Paul do, like, take the entertainment part out of it, take the fun personality part of it out of it. They are giving you real analysis of what they see on the court. And I think the problem is that you have too many people, and I'm talking about writers, bloggers, people with a microphone. Unfortunately, a lot of these people didn't play the game or learn the game at a level where they understand how to communicate the nuance. It's not just you telling me, oh, well, this is what the shot chart says, or this is how many threes they've taken. And we were just talking about this. It's how that offense is being generated and how that defense is switching, hedging, or trap recovering in pick and roll. And the things that I love about the game that draw my attention, whether it's the strategy things or the human stories, Dex, that you so perfectly stated, there's not enough of them. And my first job, like in the industry, when I was in-house somewhere, is the year after I made that web series about Donovan Mitchell and that AAU team called The City. I was part of the first build at Bleacher Report when Turner bought them and they built the video department. And you remember when everything was going to Team Stream and it
Yeah.
was programmed to be in your pocket? So like I was producing a lot of that stuff and I was leading a team of people and young producers and editors, but we were at the mercy of writing the headline and the clickbait and then doing the video with whoever the contributor was, the guest beat writer was, or whether it was with my colleagues Howard Beck, Adam Lefko, Rick Bucher, Stephen Nelson, the names go on. But it was all about the analytics, and this is what people are going to click on. And I do not agree with that philosophy. And obviously, you guys know my body of work, whether it's podcasting, whether it's filmmaking, whether it's docuseries. There's so much story here. And I keep saying it over and over again. And it's one of the reasons why Bobito and I created B-Ball Radio. We're storytellers. Everything's not just going to be based on last night's box score or this highlight package or what can fit in a tweet. There needs to be story. There needs to be the human side of things. There needs to be understanding. And it's such a beautiful game. I mean, look at what it's doing now. We're having this incredible episode and conversation, and we know each other through basketball. And there's so much good here to showcase the game and build stories around. And I'm hoping with what Windhorse had to say and people like us who are trying to drive our own shows and platforms and also work together to support each other, I hope we can be part of that new wave as a new TV deal is upon us for 25, 26 and beyond. So that's how I feel.
I hope so. I hope so. I just want to say one thing, CP, to what Eric said, and I think it's true. And I think being part of that new wave is when you think about your content first and not the headline and how you're going to draw people in and it's authentic, I think that's what separates you. You know, I want to give CP his flowers here, and I've told CP this many times. You know, when I was watching his content, when I first saw his content, that was part of the thing. It was like, oh man, this is authentic. This is somebody I know that's like me, that can talk about basketball, and it's from a fan and passionate place, but it's a real authentic conversation, right? And it's not clickbaity, it's just real. And I do think that stuff connects with people. And listen, and I do it. I work for the New York Post, and I understand that there's going to be headlines and things that they want to grab people's attention. We talk about this stuff all the time, the metrics. I get all that. But when I'm thinking about my shows and I'm thinking about who I'm connecting with and the people I have on, it's really from the organic place of storytelling. And if my guests don't reflect that, if I don't reflect that in what I'm doing, then I don't feel right about it. So, I hope that, but it matters to what you said, Eric. We all have to, and that are part of this, that are trying to be part of that change. We all have to support each other, and I think that's the only way you see that true change.
It's a very interesting debate because I wonder this, and I'll put this out there to you guys: is it that the media across the board is in bad shape, or is it really just on the mainstream level? Because is this just a situation where everybody's really serving their masters, right? Like First Take. If First Take is having record numbers, and that's based on the debate style, hot take, who's getting traded, who's the worst, who's the best, who's the GOAT, and people are flocking. The casual viewers are flocking to these guys for those sound bites, or they're going to Twitter for those sound bites. Is that just the mainstream serving their masters? And at the same time, in the grassroots or at the niche level, you are still getting the storytelling, you're getting the film breakdowns, you're getting the more authentic coverage of your team, but it's just not being covered as you would like it on the mainstream. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, when I think about individual team fans, like, I don't think there's a team out there who has fans that are like, man, like, we don't have enough coverage, because you have so many podcasters and bloggers covering the team. So is it just the commercial nature of the mainstream where they're trying to target the casual audience? They want Gen Z tapping in who's not watching games, so they're getting into the TikToks with the quick sound bites and look at this reaction. Oh, a bird flew into the stadium and, landed on the scores table. Look at this. And you know what I'm saying? Like, is it just them serving their core audience?
Yeah, no, I do think that's it, CP. I do think that's it. If you do anything on the mainstream, and Eric, I'm sure you could speak to this too, maybe there's certain differences in the places like Showtime and HBO where they've had resources to allow you, right, to do something that Eric mentioned. I thought was a great word, right? He was talking about working on the shows, and the resources to put into research matters. Like if you want really good content, it takes time. Like I'll put it like this, and this is not shade to anybody. Good content is like having a really good meal. You know what I mean? And then some content is going to be fast food, and sometimes we like to eat fast food, and then sometimes we want a fast casual meal or whatever it might be. But there's levels to this, and there's different kinds of things you can digest to it. I think the one thing I'll add to what you said, CP, because I think that's what it is. Listen, a lot of these mainstream outlets have to serve their masters. They're trying to get advertising dollars. I understand all that. The thing I think is what they could try to do is sometimes they're not willing to take risks. And that's what's disappointing. Or just be like, hey, I'm going to do something different. Let me try this out over here. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? But they're not willing to do that. And what happens with that is really when it comes down to talent and voices. Some of the risk taking is like simply being like, yo, I connected with this person. That's a new voice over there. Let me see what they have to say. But they just regurgitate the same people, the same. You and I have had this conversation, the same voices all the time, right? And it's like you could do differently if you want to. You could find this talent. I'm gonna take people behind the curtain. I was talking to CP about this for a show that he came on with me, and CP was like, "Hey Dex, here's a couple other people you could bring on your show to have a new perspective of a new voice on it." And one of them I just had on recently. And I appreciate CP like that. That's what I'm talking about in terms of supporting each other and really helping the content. You have to have the want to, guys, to want to do this, right? Like you have to actually want your content to be diverse, have more nuance, have more research. If you want to just keep serving fast food and want to be McDonald's, you're going to be McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? But McDonald's is not winning a Michelin star. I'm not saying you have to win the Michelin star. I'm just saying we understand what it is. And so I think sometimes we can't lump all this stuff together. And to your point, CP, is just understanding that some people are serving their masters. That diet is good for some people. But I would love to see for some more media outlets to bring the food analogy in a little bit more of a well-balanced diet. You can serve a little bit more. You could open up your menu a little bit more if you want to, right? Like I think it's possible, but the key is you have to want to. That's
perfect analogy. I mean, are you gonna do the research and get the quality ingredients to make this meal of content, or are you just gonna rush the shit out? And we listen. I made a decision probably about 7-8 years ago. I don't watch debate sports television anymore. I mean, not even in the background. I don't watch it. And it's done, and it's incredible because the game continues to grow. But can you imagine if there were bite-sized episodes of what Kobe created with detail in lieu of these debates, which make no sense and are proven to be wrong and silly all the time? But all they're trying to do is drive traffic and engagement. And can we all agree that one of the worst things to ever enter the basketball social media landscape is the game of start, bench, cut? I mean, could you come up with a lazier vehicle?
It's the worst, man.
Like it just works against like why we're all here, because we have such a love and appreciation for it. And I want to celebrate greatness, and I want to celebrate competition, brotherhood, teams, battles, all of that. And it all goes back to what we were saying earlier about lack of patience too. Like everybody wants everything microwavable. And no, not everything's going to be a 2-hour feature doc.
Right.
But there's room for the 10-minute mini feature, or the multi-part digital documentary, or just room for conversation and to sit and listen, because we're so consumed with the end result instead of not understanding what is experienced, learned, and valued on the journey. And for me, CP way back in the 90s, and I know I've got you for a few years, but it wasn't just about, okay, are we going to win this game and try to position ourselves for the playoffs, but like, what are we going to learn about ourselves today during this? What are we going to learn about ourselves through the preseason at practice and barely picking up a basketball and running until we can't stand up anymore? Like, what are we going to learn about who we are? And that also plays into what you said earlier, Dex, too, about the importance of the regular season. Like the '08 Celtics, if they don't win 66 games and have home court advantage, they may not be standing at the mountaintop because they needed 7 games to beat Atlanta. They needed 7 games to beat LeBron. And you need that time to build trust, chemistry, camaraderie, and all else so you could press that button in crunch time. And it's there. And it frustrates me that this stuff is not more front and center because it's not rocket science. But at the same time, it excites me because people like us are continuing to do it. And I think more people are going to continue to pay attention to it. And it'll create more opportunity for us and for us to help younger people now who are getting into the space as well. So really glad we talked about this today. It's an important conversation. And it's an important conversation we should continue to have as we do more stuff together.
For sure. And I just think, the segmentation of sports media and disruption, really, because, things that like we're doing right now has certainly disrupted the industry. Back in the time in the 80s, 90s, like when we're reading the papers, in each market, you have your go-to guy, right? Maybe it's like a Mike Lupica in New York. It's Bob Ryan, it's, so on and so forth. And it's those go-to guys. And maybe you gather around the TV on Sunday, NBA on NBC, and they're doing their feature story. And everybody's just focused on that one story and you have their attention. But now you can go to Showtime Basketball. I can watch, Quiet Storm with the Ron Artest story and really be captivated by it. There's so many different outlets to provide that. Oh, and on top of that, the players have entered the mix. And so maybe, with these guys being cut out as the middleman in certain respects, it's also impacting their jobs and how they deliver the content. A guy like Windhorst, I think we're slowly starting to see these legacy journalists or older journalists kind of adapt to the shift in media. Now they're getting into podcasts and they're getting into video. They're catching up on YouTube, or they're jumping in with these more smaller niche podcast networks to kind of broaden their careers. Now they're jumping into newsletters. So I think it's a combination, man. The shift, the tastes are changing. You have more players in the field. And I think a lot of these guys is just going to need to adapt because there are guys who are breaking down the game. There's guys who are taking you behind the curtain, behind the scenes of the NBA. There's guys who are tapping in with the fans like we are. So there is a lane for everybody. But like you said, Eric, I think, it's so interesting because the numbers say that the mainstream does like the debate shows, but there is a segment like yourself, myself, Dexter, who don't really care for it. But then we go to our sources for that content.
I always wonder with that, CP, like, right? The liking, to your point, the numbers saying that they like it. Do they like it or do they just engage with it? Because listen, let's be real, and you guys see this too, right? When you post content, some people just want to be angry. Right? Like some people just want to be angry. And what I think the debate content knows is they get that, and you use the word, Eric, engagement, right? And I put it with air quotes because the engagement is just somebody firing back and being angry. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to watch the whole show, right? It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to tune in for the good conversation. They just want to fire back because everybody wants to say their piece now on social media. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's really bad. That's why I liked your point, CP, about serving the master, because I think a lot of it comes back to that. But to the other point that you just made, which is a really, really good one, is that, and this is me, somebody who's been almost 20 years of working as a professionally in media. And I was just saying this to somebody younger today I was having lunch with. If you don't adapt, you will die, right? Media, but it's always been that media. It's just been more rapid, I would say, in the last 10 years or so. So much has changed since I started as a journalist. You have to adapt. I remember shooting video with reporters back in the late 2000s, 07, 08, 09, who didn't want to do this. They didn't want to do video. They didn't want to do game recaps. They was like, nah, I don't want to do it. Now I actually work with some of those same reporters, and they love doing this now. They hit me up like, yo, Dex, this was my story. And that's dope. It's beautiful to see. It's really beautiful to see that some of them adapted. Some of these older guys, much older than me, but they adapted. And I think that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to adapt. But the biggest thing about, I think, having to adapt is you have to look at these other people in the space that maybe weren't doing it traditionally and understand, they're working with you. And as CP said, there's a lane for everybody. Now, there are some people that are trying to adapt, but want to be like, those people didn't get here the same way I did. So they don't really belong in that space. And I don't rock with that at
Start
all,
gatekeeping.
right? Because that's archaic. I don't rock with that at all. Everybody has a different journey. Eric, you talked about doing something differently, and then you came into the space and picked up a camera and started getting into your creation you're doing. CP has another road to that. I have my own road to that. Everybody can have a different path. And the different experiences that you guys have from even worlds that were before what I did or my experience in my life, that's what makes us the people we are in the content create. Those experiences matter. And the more diverse experiences you have in terms of people creating content, the better content you're going to get. If you just want to keep it some way and gatekeep, nah, man, that doesn't work. That's old. And I don't even think the viewers are here for that. To be honest, I don't think they're here for it at all.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that. You have the old school writer who disapproves of how the new wave got there, but the old school writer thinks because they've been writing for a while, well, they're owed the opportunity to be on camera, but not work at it and take somebody else's spot, which drives me crazy. But for me, this goes back to, I'm a media intern in 99 and 2000 for TV 55 on Long Island, which is a CNN affiliate, and I'm in the locker room at the Garden with the mic flag in the press scrums during the playoffs. Like, I'm at the Pacers series, I'm at the Spurs finals series, and it was a very interesting look at what this world is like, not so much for the media, but for the athletes. And a long time ago, in a land far, far away, I was in really good shape. I was a Division III college athlete playing football at Ithaca College. And I'd be working out during that time and getting ready for the season and going in and interning and stuff. And, people would be fighting to get into the scrum and, surrounding a guy's locker before he's out of the shower. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. I'm standing off to the side. I'd make eye contact with my cameraman, and then I'd fight my way in when it was there. Like, no respect.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, Kurt Thomas once pulled me aside because I had been in there like enough times where there was some familiarity. And he said, yo, I just want to thank you. I see how you operate, and we appreciate that. Because there's such a lack of respect. And then another part of the issue, and obviously now with, we'll continue to call it new media, right? In quotes, with athletes telling their stories first person and on camera and having their shows. And we are seeing a generational shift now where there are a lot more young people in the space. But, you want to talk 80s, 90s, early 2000s, the way the game was covered, you'd have this archaic, mostly white media painting a picture of who they thought these young black men were, who had no connection to what experiences in life they had on their way to becoming a pro. And the way they were just telling stories the way they thought they should be told, which were not accurate and were one-sided. And it had a lot to do with the distrust that was created between the athlete and the media. So being able to be in the middle of this in many different ways as a storyteller, as a producer. Yes, I've been part of the media. I never viewed myself as media before. I don't have a column. I'm not a beat writer. Yes, I'm a podcast host, but I'm a storyteller first, right? I've interviewed so many dynamic personalities and athletes that being able to be on shows like this or have my show with Bobito or the stuff I used to do with BJ Armstrong, like that's second nature for me because I'm comfortable navigating those conversations and I'm always listening and wanting to learn. And to just kind of bring it back full circle to what we were talking about, I hope that there's going to be an inflection point soon and some of this can start to shift. But I do know that we're on the right side of this and wanting to create that change in the space. So that I feel good about.
Eric, can I just, CP, if you don't mind, I just want to say one thing about what Eric just said. Eric, I appreciate you saying that. Your point you made as a white man to say that here about the NBA the way it's covered, and you mentioned something about the locker room. And I used to be the same way about you in the locker room, and I do know that bothered players. You'd have all these media hoard around the locker, not wait for these guys to get changed. A player once pulled me aside, I'm not going to say who it was, in football on the Giants and had the same experience as you. Was like, hey man, I see how you approach it. You give us our space and you don't do that. The point you were making about race being a factor in that, in how these stories were told, particularly around the NBA, was what I was alluding to before. When you have these narratives, the NBA has always dealt with this. In the 80s, it was the crack cocaine epidemic that was really looked bad upon the NBA, and the black players were doing this, and this was happening, even though it was happening in other leagues. It was happening in baseball. You can look at the 80s Mets, you can see that. But the stain wasn't the same as it was on the NBA. When you look at the 90s, and especially the early 2000s, then it was the hip hop and Allen Iverson, and these players are dressing like thugs. And then it was, it's too much isolation ball. Remember that, guys? In the middle of 2000s, late 2000s, too much isolation ball. Now it's too many threes. There's always a moving of the goalpost about a league that is particularly heavily black, obviously, and even with the international influence that you don't see in other leagues. Baseball has been losing viewership and declining for years, but nobody says that it has a TV problem. Why is that? Right? You got to look at those things. And that's what I mean when it's how we talk about the league. Not we, the three of us here, but how we as collectively as a part of the media talk about the league. It's these narratives that are being pushed. And this is why the storytelling is so important. And it's important from people that understand and respect and listen and are open-minded and want to have diversity of thought and want to have diversity of people telling the stories. That's what makes it better. So, Eric, I just want to salute you for saying that, because I do think that part of it matters too, right? Like, people want to shy away from the race stuff and that, but that does matter in this conversation of how these stories are being told.
I appreciate that. I mean, I've said this before, and I think you'll both appreciate this, right? I'm very conscious of the rooms I've been allowed into. Like this started for me when I was a basketball coach. This started for me when I got into Nike basketball and was teaching the game and running clinics, both domestically and had some incredible international opportunities as well. Like, once people learned who I was and they learned my value system, they learned what drives me, like, there was no question that there was comfortability there. So I say this all to say, like, I take this on both through the lens of it's a huge privilege and a huge responsibility. It's a privilege to be allowed and trusted to tell these stories, and it's a responsibility to get it right. And that's how I look at every project, every show I produce. Coming on here with you guys, like, I wasn't just going to come on and say, I know what's going on in the league. Here are a couple of talking points. Like, I do my research, I do my homework, and it matters. And building the trust matters. Like, building trust with Kevin Garnett to direct and produce his film was one of the great, I mean, forget professional experiences, just experiences of my life, knowing that guy, who is a very unique individual, who had all the reasons in the world to distrust the media and distrust other people outside of his circle because of what he experienced. Building that relationship and trust with him to be able to then make a film that takes you through the impact that he's had on basketball culture, and the sports world, it's something I take very seriously. So I'm, again, glad we're talking about this today. And Dex and CP, I'm appreciative we're able to have this type of conversation. I think it's important.
Big time, man. Damn, this was a great show, fellas. TM in the chat, we got to cut this segment, man, and put this out completely separately from the rest. But nah, man, great segment, fellas. Great show overall, man. And I definitely appreciate both of you, bringing your experience to this conversation and really adding a lot of value to it. Dex, let the people know what you're working on, anything that you got coming out this week.
We have I won't say the name of who it is, but we have a special one-on-one interview coming up for New York Got Game. It's a big one. I will announce that on Wednesday. Should be a good one. So follow me on all social media platforms at DHenryTV. More stuff coming up throughout the season with the Knicks and the Nets. So, we'll try to keep the panic level down for everybody with the Knicks. But that's really what's going on right now. A lot of New York Got Game, a lot of more stuff going around. Not much to talk about the Jets or your Giants, CP. Not at all. Baseball hot stove heating up, but a lot of Knicks stuff. So it'll be good. Tune in to New York Got Game. Continue to support. Appreciate that. Thank you, bro.
Appreciate it, man. Eric, how about you, man? What do you guys got on the stove?
We've got a new episode of B-Ball Radio with Bobito Garcia and I taking a fun look at the NBA in-season tournament. That episode just dropped on Apple Podcasts today. So we're going to be checking in each week leading up to Vegas on some fun stuff from the in-season tournament, taking a historical perspective look on some things as well. We'll have a new lineup of guests coming up soon there. And then for me on the filmmaking side, I just got some things in development, and as soon as things are final, I'll share with those things with you soon. Putting out new episodes of The Truth Lounge with Paul Pierce, and then of course Ticket and Truth comes out every week that I'm still a part of as well with Kevin and Paul. So great time of year to be talking ball, to be on with you guys, and hopefully we can create a rhythm here. This was really great. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Salute to everybody in the chat once again. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Do me a favor, if you guys enjoyed today's conversation, like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you guys are following these guys. We put their @ and their social tags right here on their lower third, so make sure that you guys are following them and tapping in with the great work. Also, remember that the show is available in audio podcast format. No reason to miss it. You can catch us on all major podcast platforms. For the KFTV faithful in the chat, we'll be back at 6 p.m. for Game of the Week preview. Knicks versus Philly NBA Cup tip-off on Tuesday, so we're going to preview that as well, man. So make sure you guys are locking in round-the-clock coverage here on NBA Report and KFTV. CP the franchise, man. We out of here. Peace.